Live.
Good morning. Welcome to Business Lab with Dean. We are here with Jon Boyce from Brainiac Trivia. If you forget, it's right here. Brainiac Trivia. So Jon, tell me a little bit about, you do a lot of things, not just the trivia. So tell me a little bit about what it is that you're doing, and then we'll kind of dig into the trivia part.
Okay. Went to broadcasting school, so that was the goal in life. To be that. I had this vision of I'm going to be this coast to coast rock DJ. That's what I wanted, and it didn't take too terribly long to figure out that probably wasn't going to happen.
Right.
But I still do some broadcasting back my hometown, Lebanon, where I'm from. There's a small radio station, WANT-FM 98.9, and I do different things for them throughout the year. Work for Cumberland University in Lebanon as well, doing their play-by-play for them for their basketball teams. And DJ weddings. I started doing that around 2008. Been doing that about 15 to 20 of those a year.
Oh, cool.
And then, the trivia thing just kind of got weaved in there. And over the years, it's become a little bit more of a focus. But it's a little bit of everything. They all involve these microphones, but they're all slightly different from one another.
That's cool. So we'll get to trivia in a second, but when you mentioned wanting to be a DJ, is that something that you'd always wanted to do, or like what did you want to do when you grew up? There
was a time period where I thought I wanted to be a coach. I played basketball in high school and college, and so I thought that's what I wanted to be. And but it's kind of funny, when I was 13 or 14 years old, WANT, that same station, interviewed me before one of the basketball games, and I just fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I wanted to do something along those lines. I wasn't quite sure. I'm not comfortable in front of a camera and on stage or anything like that. But with a microphone in front of me never seemed to bother me that much. So
right.
So pretty early on, I wanted to do that, and I've always loved music. I've just had a huge passion for music, but I can't keep a beat or sing a note. So I'm like, I got to figure something else out if I want to kind of stay around that.
Right. So tell me a little bit about the trivia thing, because I've never gone and done trivia. I've been at a restaurant once when they were doing trivia.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how that works for people that might not have ever gone and done this.
What I love about trivia is it's just like a game show. There's a reason why there's so many different game shows on TV. There's a million different ways to do it. And, some people might like this format. Some people might like that format. So that's what I really love about it, is that it's, you can just have so many different takes on it. And then you can throw in the themes with it, as far as what the topic is and those sort of things. So it's pretty interesting to see how it is from one place to another. I get told a lot that Brainiac is difficult. I get told that by a lot of people. And I think the reason behind that is one, I've gone to some before that I thought were way too easy. I'm like, this isn't much fun. Like, I feel like I want to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the reaction you get from people when they win and they know that it's not easy to do. Like, you get a big reaction out of people, and that to me is kind of what makes the whole thing worth it.
Cool. So where do you do this?
So through the years, it's been all over the place. But one thing I learned pretty early on is that I wanted it to be at local places. I didn't want to be in chain kind of, places like that. If it's franchising locally owned, that's one thing. But,
sure.
I've been at some of the big name places, and I was just like, this isn't the vibe I want.
Right.
I want to do something creative and something different, but it takes me a month to get it, okay, to get it passed down through all the different levels that it has to go through. So last night was actually a bittersweet night. After 7 years, we hosted our very last game at A Heart's Pizza Garden.
Oh yeah.
Kim and Jim and Carrie over there have decided to sell, and they're moving on to other things. And I'm really happy for them, because I know that they've been, it's very stressful running a restaurant, very stressful.
Yes.
And Jim has a full-time job. So they're going to be able to kind of focus on that and enjoy their lives a little bit more. So last night was our last night there, but simultaneously we have one on Monday nights at Level 3 on the Square.
Mm-hmm.
On Tuesday nights, we're at Murfreesboro Axe. On
cool.
Wednesday night, we're at Station Grill. And on Thursday night, we're at Gallagher Unplugged. And then I also have 2 shows out in Lebanon on Tuesday and Wednesday that I host.
Where is Station Grill? I don't think I've ever heard of that.
It is on, do you remember where the old Bunganut Pig was?
Yeah.
It's in the same exact spot as Bunging Up Pig.
Okay.
It was on the other side of town, but during the pandemic, they
Mm-hmm.
decided to upgrade, get a little bit bigger, get a little bit more traffic area.
Sure.
But yeah, they're right there across from, there's a
Deep South.
Deep South Growlers. Yes. I love Deep South.
Yes. They have some of my money and I have some of their beer.
Just a few, right? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you do trivia, you call basketball games. It sounds like you're doing a lot. What do you do for fun, not professionally?
That's a good question. It's funny. I'm a very social person, but on a day off, it's not uncommon for me not to really leave the house. My wife has a similar work schedule as me, so we both kind of work in the evenings. So for instance, this past Saturday, she was running around all day and I texted a few friends, but nobody was really available to really do anything. So I was like, I'm gonna go to the movies. And she was like, by yourself? And I'm like, yeah, I think that'd be. So I do that fairly often. And it was funny. She called me about 2 weeks ago and she said, what are you doing? And before I could even finish, answer her, she said, let me guess, you're watching a movie. And I said, yeah. She goes, and I bet it's a movie I've never heard of. And I said, probably. And so I love watching movies. It's one of my favorite things to do. I actually just last night downloaded an app so I can start tracking all the movies that I've seen.
Oh, cool. So like a collector.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So are movies a common theme in your trivia questions?
Yeah, they are. And it's funny because you get some people like, it's too much, John. It's too many movie questions. And other people like more movies. And so I would definitely say that movies get put in there a lot. But what I love about that is you can go back so far and you can touch on people's a really good trivia question touches on nostalgia.
Sure.
And if you can bring up a movie that somebody watched when they were a child and they loved it, but they haven't thought about it for years and years and years, and then you bring it up, even if they don't get the question right, once you give them the answer, they just get this flood of memories and immediately the endorphins kick in. And then what's really neat is if somebody else on their team is like, oh, I love that movie too. And then all of a sudden those two people are talking and they found some sort of kind of common ground and it can go from there.
That's cool. So do you do that intentionally when you're building the question sets? Like try to find, different questions that are going to bring back good memories?
Absolutely. I've said for a long time, nostalgia and conversation. If I can touch on either one of those two things, it's a great question. And it doesn't even have to be a hard question. Sometimes I just put questions out there because I think they're really interesting. I'm like, I think everybody's going to get this right or everybody's going to get this wrong, but I don't think they're going to care because afterwards they're going to be like, oh, well, that was really interesting. But the conversation aspect of it, anytime I feel like I can give somebody a conversation topic, I feel like it's a home run.
So you're kind of like the MC for people's table talk.
Exactly. And
that's cool.
A big thing. And ask anybody that's ever hosted trivia. The biggest challenge is getting people to put their phones down,
right?
Is getting them off their phone and nothing will ruin a trivia game quicker than somebody Googling something.
Oh, sure.
And it does happen, but it's rare. It really is rare. Most people that come want to play the game. And if they're Googling, it just takes all of it out. But there's something about, if you can give them that conversation topic without them looking it up on their phone and be like, oh, I wonder, blah, 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 blah. It just takes it to a different level.
Yeah. That's really cool. So how did you get started specifically in setting up trivia games?
It's an interesting story. It really is.
Well, I would love to hear it.
So my wife, Crystal, she went to MTSU. She's lived in Murfreesboro since the early 2000s. And growing up in Lebanon, I came to Murfreesboro all the time, especially back then because Lebanon was even smaller than it is now. So if you wanted to come hang out, have a good time, you usually came up to Murfreesboro. So I was familiar with Murfreesboro, but when her and I started dating, I started finding all these new places. And she multiple times tried to get me to go out with her friends to this trivia night. I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds lame.
Right.
That seems so boring. We're going to go into this bar and this dude's going to ask me questions. I don't want to get quizzed at a bar. And so eventually she got me to go, and it was at Coach's, not far from here.
Right.
And the place has been a million different places. But at that time I don't know the gentleman's name, but there were two guys running it. And I went in, and within 5 minutes, I loved it. I looked at Crystal. I was like, I get this. Like, this is cool. And immediately I was looking at it. I was like, I can do that. That falls right into my wheelhouse of what I went to school for, what I'm passionate about and all that stuff. And so I immediately went home and was like, how can I do this? How can I figure this out? Because there was nothing like that back in Lebanon,
Mhm.
nothing like that. And even here in Murfreesboro, it was, scarce. It wasn't as near as big as it is now.
Sure.
And so I went and I bought a Trivial Pursuit book that was about that thick. And I found this, there was this cafe called Two Roads Cafe, a little bitty cafe that was inside of Sherlock's bookstore. And I approached the people, and the owner of the cafe was like, so you want to sit in my restaurant and ask people questions? And I was like, essentially, yeah. And he was like, what do you, he's like, I can't pay you. I was like, can you pay me in like sandwiches? He was like, sure. And so for the first 8 months or so, I hosted at this little cafe called Two Roads Cafe. And I would come in during the week and they'd pay me 2 sandwiches a week. And so I would literally go in there with my trivia book, and I'd work on stuff and eat my sandwich. And it was basically just my family that came out and played. But it allowed me to kind of what works, what doesn't work, what are they enjoying, what are they not enjoying. And then eventually I found one that actually paid me. And that was kind of the beginning of
so that's how you monetize it, because you don't charge the players, you charge the restaurant to be there.
It depends on the event. Most of the time, that's right. Yeah, it's a trade-off. Look, hey, I can bring in people on a regular basis that are going to sit here for 2 or 3 hours. And it's usually on off nights, Monday through Thursday.
Okay.
When restaurants and bars are really looking for those regulars. And then the bar will pay me or the restaurant to do that. I do have some events where I do them at private venues.
Okay.
And then I'll charge a cover for those. But when I do those, there's a little bit more involved with it. I'll bring in some lighting and some TVs and things like that. And
sure,
one thing that is a challenge when you're at a restaurant or bar is you do get those normal people that are coming in, just trying to enjoy their day. They have no idea what's going on.
right?
But they happen to come in 10 minutes before our guys come in. And then our guys are like, hey, that's my seat. That's my seat, man. What are you doing in my seat? And so when you do it at a private venue, what's nice is I can get everybody's reservations, and I set all the tables up accordingly, put their names out on the table. So once they come in, they can just walk right to their table.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And so from a marketing standpoint, what does your initial approach sound like when you're approaching a new restaurant?
It's so tough. It's so tough when people don't know that the best thing, the easiest way to do it is if you already have an established crowd, like you have a restaurant for whatever reason, like A-Hearts that sold. I'm very fortunate in that the new owners that are coming in, he loves trivia, and I got his information. We talked, and so they're just going to keep us on. They're going to close down for 2 or 3 months for a remodel, and then they're going to bring us right back. But walking in, the pitch is usually along the lines of, hey, would you like, 30 to 50 people in here on a weeknight?
Right.
And most people will jump at that.
Yeah.
I've been really fortunate that I haven't had to do that in a while, because I've been at a lot of the spots I'm at, and I've been at them for a while. And, my business model is not world domination like some other companies. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just not my philosophy.
Sure.
I'm not looking to have, 200 locations.
Right.
I'm looking to have my 7 to 10 locations, keep them local, keep them manageable, and work off of that. So once I got some good spots, hopefully I can stick around. I don't have to do that too often, but the pitch is definitely, hey, I can bring in 30 to 50 people on a weeknight on a regular basis, if you allow me and give me the time to build the crowd. And, Mark that owns Level 3, he told me something the other day. It was about a month ago. It was after one of our events, and he plays every week. He absolutely loves it. And he turned to me and he said, "This is one of the best things I've ever done for my bar." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "They're here because of you, and they come back on other nights."
Yeah.
And because it's the same crowd, like, it's become like this little community where everybody knows each other.
Right.
So you walk in there on like a Thursday night, and you'll see one of the other teams. You'll be like, "Hey man, what's up?" And you might sit there and have a drink with them or a meal or whatever the case is. And
sure.
And all of a sudden you got people hanging out that would have never hung out before.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well,
so it does sound like a lot of fun, and it sounds like operating it is a lot of fun. When it's not fun for you, how do you stay attached to that?
Good question. Really good question. When I'm sitting in the host chair, there's nothing I'm having the most fun possible. Like, I absolutely love it. So I have to remember that.
Right.
When I'm getting knee deep in topics that I don't know anything about, and I'm getting lost in all these Google searches and all of that stuff. That could be, sometimes it'll take me 3 hours to write one question because I got to research it, verify it, and all these other things. Sometimes it takes 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can verify something super quick. And so that can wear you down, and then you do that, and then you have people that are arguing with you about the answer, and like, I'm not telling you you're wrong, I'm just telling you it's not the information I have, and that can become really, but that's very, very far and few between as well. And then of course I think, like most business owners, unless you happen to be an accountant,
Right.
you do all the number stuff, and
Sure.
all the accounting and all the spreadsheets and all that stuff it's like, it's not what I wanted to do, but it's part of it, necessary evil.
So you have a business where people need to physically be in the same space.
Yes.
What did you do during COVID?
That was, for all of us, a very interesting time. I was thinking about that on the way here, and that was a really important time period for me, because my initial thought was, for years I had thought about doing online games, but it just had never happened. And so when everything shut down, I was like, hey, no better time than now. And so I started doing online games, and it started with just, phone going live and this and that. And people loved it. And the whole idea, my whole thing was, I want to keep the Brainiac name, familiar to people.
Sure.
And I want to keep people in a routine. People like, every Monday I play, every Tuesday I play. I want to keep them in a routine. So I just started doing that. And, I started doing these games every night on Facebook. And I tried to do them at the same times as what the normal games would be. And after about a week, everybody kept blowing me up saying, dude, I want to tip you. I'm like, no, it's not about that. I'm not looking to make money off of this. I just want to keep everything familiar with you guys. And I mean, it was dozens of people just emailing me, messaging me, texting me. And eventually I was like, okay, you guys win. I'll put up a Venmo account. And so I put up a Venmo account, and the response was just mind blowing to me.
That's cool.
It was really cool. And then as we kind of started to get to the end of it and things started opening up a little bit, what affected me even more is how many people came up and told me, it's like, you gave me so much normalcy during that time. And we would sit down with my family, and we would cast it up onto the TV, and we'd sit there and play in our living room. And
that's cool.
And, and that was that's when I really started to realize that for a lot of people, it's not so much about the trivia part. It's about the community part of it. And they would see all the people in the comments that they played with at the other locations, but they didn't live together or anything like that. So they said it felt like I was hanging out with my friends again.
That's cool.
And that was really eye-opening to me. And it's like everybody, you're thinking about everything during COVID. You're like, should I come out of this? If I'm gonna ever change my career, now's the time to do it. Now's the time to make a move. And I came out of that thinking, like, more resolve. I was like, I'm affecting people positively. I'm giving them something that they can look forward to and break up the monotony of their week, something they can do with their friends. I was like, nothing else I do affects people quite like that. So I decided then, I was like, I want to put more energy into this and push this more towards a full-time thing.
That's awesome. I love that. And community has been one of the common themes throughout this podcast, even for people that have businesses that you wouldn't think that would be a thing. And I think that's ultimately, people want to pay for community. People will, like, I got into watches over COVID. And so, like, of all the stupid things to build a community around is a little machine that you wear on your wrist. But I think there's a lot of people that they'll buy a new watch just so that they can talk about it with their friends.
Yeah.
Or have something to communicate about with the people that are interested in the same thing.
Yeah.
It's funny, you talked about A-Hearts. We had Jonathan Harmon was one of the first people on the podcast, and he and I met at Hernandez Mexican Deli.
Yeah.
And the food there was great. But what I loved about Steve and his place was people would go there to meet and just sit and talk.
Yeah.
And so he, like, the byproduct of a restaurant is you're building a place for people to have community.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing.
It's the Cheers mentality.
Yes. Right.
Everybody wants to go where somebody knows their name. There's no doubt about that. And it's never more evident than what you're talking about. And when people have that sense of community, how important is that? I mean, that's everything in life. People want to feel included.
Yeah.
And in today's, I mean, the internet does a lot of great things for us, the podcast and a lot of really, really wonderful things, but it can also tend to separate people and keep people from doing things that they might do otherwise, and so when you can find those things, it's just, I don't think it's ever been more important. But the other great thing is, I bet you found some people online that are into watches as well. And maybe they don't live in this area, but you can chat with them or send them emails or whatever the format is. And I think that's really cool. And I get it with the watches or anything, because everything has history. And I think once you start digging into the history of stuff, it starts getting very interesting. And I can't sit here and say anything off the top of my head, but I know I've looked up stuff on the history of watches and then the people passing watches down from generation to generation. My great grandfather wore this watch, that sort of thing. And I get it. And it's like that with a lot of different things. So that's one of the things I'm talking about. Like, if I can touch on something like that, if you came to one of my trivia events and I happen to ask a watch question, you would be over the moon. You'd be like, how cool is that?
Yeah, we're having a good time now.
Yeah. I know that one. Yeah.
That's great. I do love that. That's really cool. So when you got into this, did you think that was that even a thought in your head?
No, it wasn't. The only thing I really thought of at that time, it was in my mind, trivia was the bridge to that full-time coast-to-coast radio gig I was waiting on. And I actually, when you ever come to one of my events, or one that I'm hosting or one of my other hosts are doing, I designed it to feel like a radio show. There's music beds, there's sound effects. Each of my teams, after they earn it, which is not difficult to do, they get their own little intro. And so it's kind of like a liner when you're driving around and going in and out of a commercial break. They'll have those liners,
right?
And they fill out a little piece of paper, and they get to tell me 2 songs and a combination of 2 movies or 2 TV shows or 2 viral videos, and I'll splice together this little 30-second intro. And so wherever they play, that intro plays for them.
Oh, that's cool.
And so it allows them to personalize a little bit, because they can pick the movies, they can pick the songs, and then as the seasons and years go on, if they win some, I'll add that to them, like Brainiac Bowl 22 champion, that sort of thing. And so people will identify with it. And I've had a lot of people even say, I'd send it to them and they're like, that's my ringtone now, and someone texts me or calls me, that's what plays. And I'm like, how cool is that?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something before about you spending 3 hours researching a question. Do you build the questions yourself?
I do. Now I don't want to oversell myself, and not all of them from scratch. Like literally in my van right now, I've got a backpack that's got about 6 or 7 different trivia books in it. And my plan is, when I leave here, I'm going to go probably to a coffee shop and post up for a little bit, and I'm going to dig my nose through those, and I'll sit there and I'll go through them and highlight all the ones that I think are interesting, and the ones that I think my crowd will enjoy. But what happens so often is, as I'm researching those, something else will pop in my head. Like, well, I wonder. And then I'll start looking it up and verify it. And that's hard to turn off, by the way. Like,
right.
I'll be watching a movie and I'll be 30 minutes in the movie. I'm like, I don't know a thing about the plot line, but I know that dude's shirt is gray. They're in New York City and the clock said 3:30.
Yes.
But yeah, so I do spend quite a bit of time putting that together. I have a big database now of probably close to 15,000 questions on my laptop, and constantly adding to it. And so there's a lot of time involved in that part.
So as I'm thinking about it now, you have to come up with new questions every day.
And the bad side of having 95% of the same people from week to week that are coming out and playing is I've constantly got to be putting new stuff up there. And so I probably spend anywhere from 10 to 15 hours every week just doing that. Just writing questions and putting the games together.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet you there are people that would do that voluntarily.
There are, but and I do have lots of people that'll send me questions like, dude, check this one out. Sometimes they'll be really cool and type it up and email it to me and all of that. I still have to verify it though.
Right.
And while it does speed it up for sure, I got to make sure it's out. And there's still bad information that I get, and I'll put stuff out there. It happens, but
sure.
But yeah, I try to verify it, and it's always funny. Somebody will pull up Wikipedia. I was like, you can't use Wikipedia, man.
Yeah,
it can't be Wikipedia. That's a starting point. Scroll to the bottom, and they'll have links at the bottom of Wikipedia, the sources. Click on those, and then let's start from there. But yeah, so it's that can be that can drag you down sometimes.
Yeah, we've told my boys when they're writing research papers, Wikipedia is not an acceptable source.
It's not an acceptable source,
The
unfortunately.
Encyclopedia Britannica, yes, but
Yes.
not Wikipedia.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want there to be ink on that paper.
Yes, exactly.
So as a business owner who does something really fun, what advice would you give to somebody that's thinking, oh, I've got this hobby and I love it. Now I'm going to make money doing it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Have a second job. Have a second job. It's so because if you try to jump right in, and I think that the stress will overwhelm you because you're going to have the stress of just trying to build the business, and then on this other side, yeah, your house note, your car note, and food, electric, all this other stuff. It's just going to put way too much pressure on you, and I think that causes people to not let the business grow organically.
Sure.
So and of course it depends on the business. Some businesses don't allow that. You got to jump in head first and hope you can swim.
Right.
But that was my big thing, for a long time, knowing that I had some other jobs that were there to float me, allowed me to build the business and build the brand. Second thing is, I was listening to the podcast with Missy Lay, and she said something similar to something I like to say: know what you don't know.
Right.
And, let other people take care of things for you that aren't in your wheelhouse, and trust those people.
Sure.
And listen to your customers as well. I think that's been one of the best things for Brainiac is, people will come up and be like, hey, you ever thought about doing this? You ever thought about doing that? And so the game is kind of molded and evolved into like this hybrid of what I thought and what a plethora of other people have suggested. And, I think that made it unique and different.
That's cool. I love that. That's very good advice, because it is stressful. It's stressful enough starting a business, and then to try to stay attached to that passion while you're doing the monotony and the minutia of monetizing it. Oftentimes you can't get those together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that advice. That's fantastic. Where is Brainiac Trivia going in the future?
One of the things, not only what I told you about earlier about just what it means to people and the effect that can have on people during COVID, I learned some new technology and how to utilize, technology a little bit better. And that has allowed me to present the game to people that don't play on a regular basis. So it's really become a really fun team building exercise for different businesses and organizations, things like that. A guy came in and played one of my games about 2 years ago, and then he hired me. He owns a company that is based in California, but he lives here in Murfreesboro. The company's based in California. Everybody works remotely.
Oh, wow.
And so he hired me for a series of games. It was 2:00 our time, noon California time. And I would host these Zoom online games.
Oh, that's cool.
And we did a series of 7 games. I put a point system with it, so we'd have a champion at the end of it. And he told me, he's like, man, they start talking about it Monday morning. We do them on Tuesday afternoon. He goes, Monday morning they talk about it. Tuesday we play, and then the rest of the week they're just talking smack to each other. And he loved it because he said, these people don't even see each other in person most of the time, but now they're sitting here in all these chat rooms and emails and all this stuff, and it's brought them closer together. And so, that, and I've done quite a few for different sports teams. It's just team building exercises. I've done for a lot of different companies, especially around the holidays. You get a lot around the holidays, do Christmas trivia and things like that. But that's my big goal is I want to do more and more of that. The private team building, kind of one-off type, events. And that's where I'd like to go.
That's cool. I think that's a great idea, especially as businesses do get remote and people are all over the country. There has to be a way to build that community.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So how can people find out more about you, more about Brainiac Trivia, if they want to know where they can go play?
Well, you can social media. We're heavy on Facebook, and I do have Instagram as well. And I am actually working with somebody to rebuild the website. So I'm going to try to make that a little bit more and accessible. And I've it's one of the things, know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've tried and I've just realized, I was like, I don't get this thing updated like I need to. And it's got bad information on there that needs to be gone. So, and I just don't know what I'm doing most of the time with it. It looks okay.
Yeah.
But they can head over to brainiactrivia.com. There is a website, and it's the one that I put together. So don't judge me. But it'll be redone soon, but it'll have all the information on there they need.
That's cool. And tell me about, you're the butler.
I am the butler. Missy Lay is one of my favorite people on the planet.
Yes, mine too.
She is just a phenomenal human being. And you know, I was thinking about this on the way over here as well. You know, her daughter Anna, we used to play. That's how I met Missy, was through trivia. She started playing trivia.
Okay.
It was at Sports Season, which is now a Mexican restaurant over on South Church Street.
Right.
And Anna would come up. She was like this tall, and she would come up and she'd have her answer. And her game was she'd always want to do this with her answer card. You know, she didn't know she'd put it on my head or something like that. So I've known Missy for a long, long time, and she, you know, she started doing the Clue, and I even remember when she was even thinking about starting her business. You know, her and I talked about it a little bit, and pros and cons and things like that, and now she's one of the first people I text or call when I got a question about what should I do with this, what should I do, you know, what do you think? And so the first couple of years that she did it, I wasn't able to go. I always had weddings and stuff like that. It's a Saturday.
Yeah.
And so last year, I think it was before Christmas last year, I texted her. I was like, do you have a date yet for your Clue party? And she's like, yeah, I do. And so she gave it to me. I was like, I'm booking this down. I'm putting a red box on my calendar around this date. I do not want to miss this. And so then she, about a few months later, she kind of reached out and I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And so I'm terrified. I do not, you know, like I said, I feel like I've never been an actor of any sort. I've always felt incredibly uncomfortable on stage or anything like that. So
right.
It'll be fun. I know she called me Lurch on your podcast, and I can own that. I can own that.
You are very tall.
I am very tall. I am very tall. And my wife tells me I don't have the greatest posture anymore. So I'm working on that, but I'm excited about it. And the great thing about doing an event like that with somebody like Missy is, you know, you can trust that everything's on the up and up.
Yes. And
you can trust that, you know, what she's saying as far as where that money's going and all of that sort of thing is exactly where it's going.
Right. And
I've been really, really blessed in my life to have a lot of influential women outside of, and it's probably, I grew up with 3 older sisters.
Okay.
And of course my mother. So I've always looked up to women, but you know, Missy Lay, Becky Lanham is another one in this community that has just really been just really over the top nice to me and helped me out with things. And then Susie James, who owns the radio station back in Lebanon, all those 3 women, you know, Susie doesn't know the other 2. They would love each other. And they all have the same mindset of local, you know, that's a local radio station. That was one of the reasons why I loved it. You know, she'll text me and she'll be like, hey, can you cover this shift? I'm like, sure. You know, and
that's cool.
And so those 3 women outside of my family have probably been the most influential on me. And so when Missy asked, can you help? If I can, I'm going to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so all of the money donated this year goes to, what's the name of the charity?
It's Rutherford County Helps, I think is what it is.
Yes.
Which I admittedly don't know a ton about the organization, but that kind of goes to what I was just saying. I know Missy's going to put it in the right spots.
Yeah.
And that's just the trust that I've, you know, gotten from her. And so I want to reciprocate that. And so yeah, I'm excited about it. I do not know who the murderer is yet. So don't be hitting me up, but I will take bribes later on. No doubt.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the nice thing about the Clue Party is they don't know who the murderer is yet.
Yeah.
And because I was Professor Plum last year.
Yeah.
And so they didn't know until that morning who was going to do it, which I thought was cool because then there's no way for the system really to get gamed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I loved what you said as well, that you're talking to the other Professor Plums, and like, it's almost like this, like fraternity and of these different, and I think that's awesome. Like next year, whoever the butler is, like, I would love to reach out to him or her and say, you know, hey, you do this, you got any questions, hit me up, you know. And then of course, when I donate next year, I'll probably donate to whoever is playing the butler.
Exactly.
And I think that's really cool. And I think that's a way that she can continue to build this the way she's doing and just make it bigger and better every year.
I agree. And so if you do want to donate to Rutherford County Helps through the Clue Party, just go to, is it BoroughClueParty.com?
I believe so. Yeah.
BoroughClueParty.com and scroll down to John's character, the butler, and donate some money to that charity.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be a fun time. It'll be a really good time.
Cool. Well, John, this was fun. You and I have met briefly before, so this is the most we've had to talk, and I'm glad that we were able to connect.
Would you like a trivia question before we go?
Yeah, let's do this.
I brought some games from a few weeks ago, and so I'll give you one. I'll give you two here. This one's a health and medical, so this is like a legit question, but I found it really interesting. Dating back to Native Americans, the bark from what type of tree can be used to make a crude form of aspirin? So they just take the bark right off this tree everybody's heard of. Crude form, so I wouldn't say go home and do it. But if you're ever stuck out there in the wilderness, maybe you can.
Okay, so the word, I tend to be a very verbal person, and so the word sequoia is coming to mind, but I don't think that's right.
That's a good guess. Not correct though. Willow is the right answer.
Really?
White willow, to be specific, is the best one, but a willow tree, you can peel the bark, and I'm sure there's some other things involved with you don't just eat it.
Right.
There's probably something else involved. So that one's a little, out there, but and here's one more. I'll give you one more. In 2001, history was made when pizza was delivered to the International Space Station. What restaurant became the first to deliver space pizza?
No way. In 2001.
2001.
I'm in the International Space Station, so I'm assuming it was an American company. In 2001, I'm gonna say Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
All right.
Well done.
Yay.
Yeah.
So, when you think about Pizza Hut and you're talking about community and nostalgia, like last week, my wife and I were talking specifically about Pizza Hut, and I remember the sound of the red cup clanking on the tabletop.
I can hear it now that you say it. I can hear it.
And I was like, I want one of those red cups with the pebbled kind of plastic outside. I want one of those.
Yep, absolutely. Me and a friend went to Flashback Arcade over the weekend, and I can't remember what game it was, but when I saw it, I was like, that was in my Pizza Hut. I immediately remembered the arcade game from my Pizza Hut.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, John, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.